Hi, and welcome to the Holistic Hub with Marie and Martine, a welcoming, nurturing, and soul supporting environment of all things spiritual, energy, and alternative. Our intention is to freely and lovingly share the personal truths, stories, or wisdoms we've gained, hopefully offering any guidance, new perspective, or light bulb moment that you may wish to take away to assist you through your navigation of the journey out of 3D, through 4D, and toward 5D and beyond. I feel like we're
Hey, how you going? Hi, Marie.
Hi, sorry, I was just chatting.
Welcome to another hub. Yay. We're not together today, Marie. I was in that chair just beside you drinking 2 cups of tea last time, and here we are. But the important part is that we're on a rhythm of the hub again, and we're here to we just were sitting there going, well, what are you feeling today? And I was just feeling the need to be sharing the teachings of something again. So when we first started out the hub, I loved that we were reminding and teaching about, say, the violet flame and crystals and energy cord cutting. And there were some really cool topics that we used to discuss about. And I felt like, because we're just doing a little snippet here, that we could tune into something along those lines again. So Marie and I just got quickly chatting. I'm like, well, is there anything that you vibe into that? And she just started sharing her thoughts on it. I was like, yeah, okay. I feel like we're on the same page. Obviously, we're on the same page, but we're going to have very different thoughts around that. And, I'm going to hand over to Marie in a second. What I'm planning on chatting about today is a lot of my clientele really come to me and when we're talking through a lot of things, they're saying to me, but I don't know how to then get that vibration in the everyday world. I don't know how to make that choice in the everyday world. And they're talking about, say, patterns or belief structures. So say we're talking about, valuing like the concept of feeling secure and safe over being able to jump and make the plunge into the next step. And Marie and I have been absolutely talking about this layer of trust that spirit is guiding us both to just be in where we jump, and we trust after we trust along the way that all is perfect and all is in alignment. And Marie and I talk regularly. She discusses with me what it takes to come into that vibration of that trust and like that high knowing. And when I feel like I'm journeying with my clients on that, for me, it's about the choice that we make to up level into that particular frequency. And it's about identifying what that frequency even feels like to know that that's the choice that you're making. So let's just jump off and hear what Marie has to say about whatever she needs to feel like she needs to share. And then we'll circle back.
We'll circle back. I say to my team, what I've noticed in my immediate world, in my family, myself, and with my team, when we were together, there were discussions that we're both looking at about, this journey is always about how many layers of trust are we coming back into the remembrance of, because that's who we ultimately are. So this process of whether it's up leveling or whether what to do or how do we get there or what's the process for me, it's very clear cut. The process is, am I in fear right now? It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what I'm saying. It doesn't matter the depth and the level and the breadth of the leap that I am asking myself to take, or I feel that I am being asked to take, whether it's this or that. It's just how I always come to any choice in my life to come back into that moment that I have choice is firstly, where am I? Where am I in my feelings right now? Am I in confusion? Am I chaos? Am I in doubt? Am I in fear? Am I unsure? Am I consciously knowing but may not be acknowledging that I do have feelings of fear in me? And I'm talking over myself thinking, well, I want to get there and I want to be that. And I know I can do that. And I've got all this head talk that's going on that's telling me like, oh, yeah, you're okay. You're going to do it. But am I acknowledging what I'm actually feeling that is fearful? because that's the first port of call. If we're not acknowledging what's there, well, what are we doing? What are we up leveling? So the minute we know we've got fear, let's just go back into that. Let's go back to the self and say, okay, what's it about? Instead of trying to fix it and make it compact or put something over it to make it better so I could possibly take a leap. If we're not dealing with what that is, that remains is a vibration, because we have to keep remembering everything is a vibration. Every thought we have is ours. Every choice we make is ours. And until we are daring to look at ourselves and go within, well, what can change? Because none of your answers are outside. Nothing from out there, no person from out there is going to fix or tell you or help you to make the jump, because you are the ultimate who has to make the choice. And ultimately, if you're not believing in the choice that you're taking, you're just going to loop around and have the same experience again, coming in a different angle. Because until you level up the vibration by acknowledgement and ownership, and just even that's enough, the vibration shifts with you. So something else presents that you then emulate. You radiate from your being to shift the story or the game or the movie you're experiencing. So personally, that's for me where I start.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah, I absolutely, you can't not start there. It's about understanding, bringing it back to yourself. And one way I've been explaining this lately is I saw a reel where a guy was like really beautifully discussing the boundaries that we need to put in relationships, and ultimately that those boundaries, if they're not met, then we continue to put them in. And it got me thinking, because I guess in our relationships we have, like, I have a really interesting perspective of boundaries. I feel like a couple of years ago I really even took the word boundaries as a lower vibrational tool, and it ceased to sort of no longer exist in my world. But I understand where he was coming from relative to particularly intimate other relationships, and how we're putting in boundaries to get our needs met, etc. But what it got me thinking about is how easy it is for us to project out. As soon as we call or the need something for a boundary, we're basically expecting the other person to come to the party and help come along for the ride in fixing whatever stuff we've got going on. And when I referred that back to, my experience being a mother and having a child, and when I put a boundary in with my child and she doesn't meet that boundary, I don't just write her off. I can't just leave that relationship. She's stuck with me forever. So I can't just go, okay, well, you haven't met that boundary, so see ya. Or, okay, we've talked about this boundary 1,000 times. I feel like this relationship just needs to come to a close. You can't do that with your kid. You don't do that with your kid. So why would that be something that we do in general? And so, when it comes to my relationship with my kid, if I put what I call, if a loose term boundary in with her and she doesn't meet that boundary, it ultimately makes me go, okay, well, what's actually coming up for me? What's actually really going on? And it helps me reflect back to me a lot faster in being, and Marie and I have talked so much about this in the last few weeks, the co-creator of how and what foot we're putting forward today, and how that's going to create the outcome of what we're doing tomorrow. And I guess where I always start is pulling it back to me, which again, say we're looking at basic one-on-one psychology, they'll talk about, that there's two ways of us being able to resolve issues. One is obviously on our own, and that's self-reflection, and the other one is with another person. And I'm not saying that then you can't resolve that with another person, but that person needs to be at least being able to hold accountability for it not to be on this perpetual cycle of, he said, she said, and then it just sends you on a spiral back into the lower vibrational situation, which is why a lot of the time I like to just view the world as giant yes days, where when something comes at you, like, you know, in my world, that might look like a client canceling or a friend organizing something for me to go on, or a friend canceling something for me to go on, or something happening in like in the world. You know, I look at that as an opportunity to go, okay, cool. All right, well, let's just sit with that. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last week, and she was talking about like the music world at the moment and how the music world isn't getting people to commit to like the big concerts and things like that. And she was reading articles on why, but couldn't quite come up with a conclusion. And I said, do you think it's just because people are not really open to committing to something that could potentially not feel in alignment with them at the time, or not, they not feel like going to? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, because I feel like that's how I'm more operating in my world these days, where I don't often know until the 11th hour if something feels right. So I don't really enjoy committing to too much before I'm ready to, or, you know, I like that openness of the ability for the flow to arrive. So I know I just went on a giant tangent then, but that's where I start.
Well, what you're just talking about then is just more and more and more now. We talked about it for so long, and lots of people are talking about it, is that we're just being asked to be more present in the now. And I don't know how many years I've been saying to people, you won't be making plans. Don't bother about plans. Don't even go there very soon, because you're locking yourself into something that might be a limitation to you ultimately, because we're changing so rapidly now. And I think this is where people are getting thrown, is how quickly you can change from day to day, minute to minute, how fast that pendulum can swing. And 1 minute you can, I know for me, I've been in bliss states, 5D states of late. And then the next thing I've swung down and thought, oh, and it took me a while to realize that this is simply us jumping the timeline so fast now, which we've never done, up until probably 18 months, 2 years ago, tops. We're rapidly shifting between vibrations now, which we are needing to consciously come into a balance for ourselves individually and personally. And we'll have to walk through those paths to understand where we sort of get our feet, so to speak, and understanding what that means, that it's not negative and it's not anything of our old consciousness of, oh, where did I stuff up, or I've gone backwards, or any of that old thinking. We've got to let that go. It's just really the whole retraining of our brain now to say, well, hang on, where am I right now? And that's all that matters, because now is where you create the next moment. And it doesn't even matter what someone might have done to you 10 minutes ago, an hour, a week, a year ago, let alone a year ago. Let it go if you can, because that is so the past. And as I've always said, anything in the past we can't go back to. You simply can't. You can hold on to it as long as you want. But is that in your highest good? Who's that affecting? When we hold on to stuff and we're replaying, we're regurgitating, we're going over, we just can't let go, and we keep revisiting stuff. Why?
Yeah.
Now, the real point to that moment is, for many people, is, again, in this moment of now, I have a choice. And again, for me, my work through process is, where am I? How am I feeling? What's sitting there? Who is this about? How many people? Usually one. Why is this coming up again? And I might have worked through it already, but it's another layer that's coming up. And then I have to sit with it and own, how am I feeling in that moment? And this only happened to me again the other day. 2 people popped up again. I thought, wow. And like, one of them was years and years and years ago. And I thought, this is fascinating. When I sat with it, and I was just driving in a car, I had my granddaughter beside me. This just happened randomly. I wasn't planning it. I wasn't meditating. I wasn't going looking for anything. It was just boom, now. So this is what we're asking. When it comes, go in as soon as you can now. And so in that moment of now, with her beside me, listening to the wiggles and jumping around, I chose to go, yep, you're okay. I know you'll be fine. I need to listen and go and feel this out. And it was simply about forgiveness. And it was like, why am I still feeling this? And the feeling was, I felt still pain. There was still a sadness that I'd not reconciled within me. And it was still a choice then. Do I choose to hold the sadness and that moment that was attaching me still to the past? Or could I now realize that that was just how it was and choose to just move forward? Now, even if that comes back again, my choice is to move forward. So that's a positive step. And then to send love and cut my ties, how I do, just free the space, free myself up completely, free all parties in this moment of now to move forward. And I did that. And I had a little tear of, it wasn't even the sadness, but it was like a release tear. And I just let that drip, and it didn't do any flow, but it was just enough to say, you've just let that go. That energy has shifted because you had a tear. That's flow.
Mm.
So I accepted that. I felt better. I just thought, I don't even know the outcome. I don't need to know anymore. But just right now, that felt okay. And I just moved forward. And then in no time, I realized it was gone.
Yep.
And that's all we're being asked to do now. What I would recommend thoroughly is please watch this. The headier you get, the more you're up here thinking, I can tell you now, you are in your ego. You are not here where the answers lie.
Yep.
This is where your ego wants you to be, to keep you screwing up, to keep you confused and chaos, and to keep you in separation from the moment of flow. Every time, 9 times out of 10, doesn't matter what you justify and excuse for yourself or whatever, that's ego. Just take the breath. And even if you just recognize that, you've achieved. Simple as that. Little things. We don't need big, whoa, wow, look at that, it's all done. These are going to be like little gems of wisdom moments that I feel that are coming more and more and more. And every time we dare to do that, they'll build and build and build and build. And they free and free and free you from whatever that thing is.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a bit to add on that, but I loved what you said before. You come back, you go, where am I? Then you said 2 other things. How am I feeling? And then what was the third one? You don't know now, do you? I'm going to have to rewind, aren't I?
I don't know.
I should have noted how many minutes in there.
That's me. That's me though. I'm now.
Yeah.
I can tell you now, my husband is so frustrated with me now because he keeps saying, don't you remember that? I told you that. And it's like, it's here, it's gone. It's here, it's gone. Because I'm not holding on to anything anymore that I don't need. It's gone.
Yep.
And it's not Alzheimer's.
That's one of my favorite things. Like, I feel like I realized that first and foremost in the clinic when people would go, you said that last time. I was like, oh, did I? Well, it must be true then because I keep repeating it. Hey. Whereas Isla calls me a geriatric for it. He's like, don't you remember, Mum? I don't know if we can trust your brain.
Yeah. Now my husband says to me, oh, so will I ring the nursing home now? No.
Yeah. I'm in the moment. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I feel like that's all really good stuff. And as you said, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than finding that space to come back to. And that's where we spoke off in the last hub. When I looked at you and I said, hey, wasn't it great that you could take that month off, Marie? And you were like, well, hold on. I didn't take the month off. I just listened and was told to have the month off. And so I was like, whoa, yes. It's so true, whereas taking a whole month off up until that point in time would trigger me too much. It would bring up too much that I was probably able to kind of move forward with. But after that moment in time, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I've seen the ripple effects of just what that little invitation offered me. And, I feel like I am in this place where I'm oscillating between the two energies now, where I'm completely at peace with so many aspects of that part of the journey. And then there's still a part of me that is trying to fight that a little bit. So it's like that. It's like a little bit of a journey. And I've been on an experience in the last maybe week where I'd felt the vibrations, like Marie had said, someone had kept flashing in, and they weren't flashing in a very nice way, meaning I felt like I was getting, lack of a better word, psychically attacked. And so I had to kind of tune in and go, well, dude, what's the deal? What's the dealio?
Yeah.
And it was, again, me clearing things on a a grander scale with that individual. And when it really shifted, it was because we came together in a dream. So we came together in a dream, but in the lead up, in the awake state, the other awake state, the true awake state. But it was because of all the work that I was doing in the lead up to that too, that created that opportunity in that space. Because when it came up, I wasn't fighting it. I wasn't going, well, that's a bit rude or anything like that. I was just going, well, this is interesting. This is really interesting. Okay, well, what can I look at here that it's bringing up in me? And the more that I did that, and I just felt the energy shift completely. And I haven't seen that person. I probably won't get to see that person now for maybe another week or so. So it'll be interesting to see when we see each other what like energy I feel between us. And I feel like that's the ultimate test, you know. When I first sort of really started working with this deep accountability, there was really no reason to even have a conversation with anyone about what was going on between what they were raising in me, because it's none of their business. It's still telling more about me. And the more that we can continue to just own that, I feel like that's what, to me, up leveling really is it's making the choice to see, well, I can see what I'm aligning to. I can see what fear I'm buying into. And I challenge that fear. I challenge you. And I'm going to, you know, that age-old saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. And, you know, if we don't have an element of sort of what we perceive as risk involved, then it's really not trusting, is it? It's really not trusting that everything will be and work out. It's just that you don't have to say in what that looks like, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, the elements of trust and faith, and then this is what happens on this path is, you know, it never stops. And the further you evolve, the higher you spiritually evolve, the greater the levels and tests of faith and trust, because that's the pathway we've chosen into the remembrance of our true attributes and our God self, is that we've said we're not going to screw it up this time. We're not going to be dark with our frequencies and misuse and use the energies for anything less than love. So we've literally put in these self-tests, and that's what they are, to that part of us that says, I'm willing to dare to attempt this and have that risk through, and all the fears that, you know, it doesn't matter who we are and how level high, you know, whatever perceived level you think you're at, you still have vibrations of fear that will rise to, you need to move through to the next graduation point, so to speak, or the next spiral evolution. Because we have to keep remembering that whatever we are feeling and presented with, and whatever we see in another, we are that vibration. Full stop. Even if it's at dream time, if it's in this time, we can only see that what we are, because we have to keep coming back to the point we are energy. That's all we are. That is the truth. We are vibration and frequency and particle waves of sound. And in that knowledge, then through the laws of attraction and the universal principles, we can only attract before us a like vibration. So even if that's something before us that we're not liking, well, we have the match. Or if we didn't, we wouldn't have it in our face. Simple as that. So again, our ego can justify an excuse and do all these things and tell ourselves lots about the other person. But every time you're looking at the other person, being positive or not so, you're looking at yourself. Because that's what you're calling in. You're calling in that co-player to say, show me now what I'm ready for. From this level, not this level. Your higher self is saying, right, we're ready for you to see yourself on another grander scale and release a part of you that is not a vibrational substance to the heart. So every time we're calling in that person. And so if they're our challenge, well, what is that challenging within us? If we're struggling with someone, we're struggling with ourselves with that vibration. We're denying it, we're ignoring it, we haven't harmonized it. Ultimately, for me, this path, and the one thing I'm working on every day now, is the harmony of myself. How am I feeling? As I say many, many times, am I feeling happy, joyous? Am I in balanced? Do I feel okay? And if so, keep going.
Mm.
That's it. That's all I'm concerned about. And if I'm not, I need to readjust. Why not? What's just happened? What am I thinking? What's presented? What brought me into this state where 5 minutes ago that I wasn't?
Mm.
Now, that could be from within me. Like I said, that feeling that came up, it might be presented to me by another. Either way, it's about me.
Mm.
And it's not for them to be fixed, not for them to get their act together and I'll feel better. Because the truth is, you can't be happy until you choose to be happy. No one else will make you happy by them doing something, changing their ways, being different, doing that, not doing that. That's just the bullshit talk we give ourselves. I'm sorry.
Mm.
The reality is every minute of now, you've got a choice. What do I want to do about this now for me?
Yep.
And the minute you shift that is when you see the shift outside of you. And that person that you might have just bagged out for the last hour, year, or 10 years, that you made a major shift in here, or you've recognized and acknowledged something, you'll see an instant shift in them out there. And you'll think, wow, because that's how I learned. By shifting me, I saw then the changes that I could make in my world by changing this.
Yep.
Boom. That was like game changer. Here I go. What else can I do? What else am I thinking that's stuffing up my perceived world that I've been blaming and pushing outside of me that I can now bring home and start to harmonize within myself to have a better outcome and a better experience in my life, which brings me then joy. Why wouldn't I want to do that?
Which is the biggest leverage of all, isn't it? Like, I feel like for me along my journey, relationships have been the biggest test because they will be the thing that raises the most in me and then reflects the most in me. And so, to use the example of seeing someone else as the victim, like I know that in times of my past that, I've gone, oh, I'm feeling really challenged to hang out with this person because they're constantly in the victim. It doesn't really change it by me just identifying that they're playing the victim. What changes it is by me observing what the victim is for me, why I'm even seeing it in them, how and what is my reaction here and how I'm experiencing it. Because I now know that in my relationships, if something's being raised with me and with them, then it's still telling more about me, and it's how I can come back to a place of peace with that relationship. In the Steiner world, we talk about the temperaments. So there's like 4 temperaments, much like in that sphere that you see earth, air, fire, water. And so obviously there's going to be opposite temperaments as well. And then the temperaments are going to cross over where the ones that they're boundarying with, they can cross into. So naturally we've got like all of them will have a polar opposite temperament. And it's really interesting to understand the Steiner temperaments because you do see how polar opposite and how obviously when it comes to our kids, you can't necessarily pop one out that's going to be a like temperament or one that you might get the polar opposite one. And then what are you going to do with that, right? You have to learn, just like we do with the love languages, we learn how to give them what they need in that love language because we want to bridge that gap, and because that polar opposite is just the flip side of what we are. So the polar opposite of like 2 of them would be that one's really bubbly and outgoing and one's quite an introspective soul that some would deem as being depressed, but ultimately they're not. This one over here experiences this happiness in all the small things. This one here experiences what they deem as really joyous, momentous things twice a month. It doesn't make either of them bad. They're all just this form of temperament that is perfect and necessary for our planet to serve a myriad of things that needs to be served on our planet and to be connecting with all of the different things in different ways. But, isn't it lovely when the 2 of them could actually just come together and meet each other at a place where they can have a conversation, where they can love each other, where they, to me, that's my goal in life is to meet anyone on the planet and not be aggravated by them.
Yep. Yeah. And I was only saying I went out to an appointment with my daughter-in-law to be this morning, and I know I put on it. We have a 5D group. We just have a chat on Facebook or Messenger with, and I put this up last week. But in the last week, I've really noticed where I've just felt the shift in me, but I've worked towards the shift as well. And I've gone out just with the purity of heart. I've intended every day I'm harmonized. I do my light work. I intend every morning. I see my light, I do my stuff that I know is maintaining my field. Now that's paramount, because that sets you up for the day of what you're going to attract. The simple thought of how you're waking up in the morning sets the day. It's true. If you're waking up going, oh, well, guess what's coming? If you wake up aware of the and you can shift it a bit, well, you just changed what's coming. If you wake up in the opposite polarity, you'll have a very different day completely. But in that harmonious state, I just realized how much I just wanted, and my intention was just to be and to radiate the Christ light. That's been my intention for a while now. I just want the light of God to flow through me as best and as free as that can be, and that I have nothing and I'm not attached to anything at any time, to the best of my ability. And it takes a while to get there, and I'm still not there. I'm working there. But in this last week, I've seen that validation, because we'll get the higher synchronicity and the validation from our higher self in the energetic aspects as well, by what comes back to us. And so my beautiful gifts have simply been, and they've been through older people. And I've had all men actually, which was really interesting, but that's been my masculine to go out, which has been my demonstrative part of me, to be that and let the goddess work together in her virtues, but he demonstrates that in balance. And I've had these beautiful old men in all different situations, and another one today, who've all just come up out of nowhere and just struck conversations with me. And they just wanted to chat. And I've given them the time, because I am the time now. I have the time, no matter what. And today, the first one was just so beautiful, and we were there for ages and ages. And I could see my husband in the background, like going, what are you doing? And I just ignored, cut the ties, did my thing. And at the end of it, he just said to me, thank you so much for speaking to me today. And I heard on so many levels the loneliness, the despair, the angst, everything, and the dismissiveness that nobody would give him the time. And it was just this moment of, I could feel my heart swell. Then there was the next one that came along that I spoke to in a similar but different way. And then I was outside a toilet in a shopping centre. And I was waiting for her to come out because I was finished first. And I was just standing there, and here comes this mentally handicapped man who, I'm not, I would say many people would walk away from, not being very honest here. And they think, oh, I've seen it. And he came out, and he was, walking differently, and he was sort of talking to himself. And I just stood there and I smiled, because I realize I smile all the time at people, and half the time I don't know I'm smiling. And he looked at me and he just smiled, and I smiled back, and I said, hello. And he said, huh, sorry, this is not to do it, but this is him. He had a very slurred way of saying hello. And he said, what's your name? So I told him, well, we had this little conversation outside the toilets. And his heart, you could see he was so happy to be talking, and I could feel how joyous he was. And I felt joyous just talking to him. Then my daughter-in-law came out, and she was sort of looking at who it was, and we still continued to chat. And I said, well, I'm going now. And he said, oh, yeah, I'm waiting too. I'm waiting for my friend to come out too. And I said, well, this is my friend, so we're going to go now. And he said, okay. And I said, well, you have a lovely day. And he said, you too. And I walked off, and he was just standing there with a smile on his face. But this is all we need to do. We don't have to be great healers and great gifters and great this or great that, or look what we do. Yes, that's wonderful. But the most godly moments are those exchanges. They are the moments where we could possibly making a difference. We don't even know we're making in someone's life by truly and compassionately, with great intention of love, to offer our light in that moment to somebody. And we walk away. And I just know, and I don't care about the outcomes, never do. But I just know in my heart that I've had a fruitful exchange, and that makes my heart sing. And in that space, I'm lighter.
And when we do continue to just trust in that, that's where we then ripple effect that into all the aspects of our life where, you know, it's not about forcing an income to happen. It's not about forcing stability or safety and all of those things. They naturally begin to occur because you're creating the space there. It just creates the ripple effect to continue to create from that frequency. And that's where that trust of support comes in. That's where we ultimately are supported. And I know that that's a really tricky thing to really breathe into, especially when we're in that third dimensional fear. But it's becoming more and more proof is in the pudding to me, the more that I step into that frequency, that, you know, there's nothing I need worry about. There's nothing I need do.
And I think, you know, at the end of the day, because we're not going to make this a long one today, but at the end of the day, I feel that to move forward in the situations you've spoken about with your clients and how to do that when they ask you, is ultimately what we want to do is, as I said right at the get-go, recognize fear. Fear for what it is. Are we feeling it? You've already shifted the vibration to it already because you're in conscious awareness and you're acknowledging it. You're not denying it anymore or pretending it's not there. Now you're making an energetic shift. Ultimately, what we want to do with our fears is we want to befriend fear, not fear anymore. Now, we are absolutely intrinsic. We are innate beings that we have been programmed and trained in fear. It's part of our system, part of our nervous network, our DNA. It's been reprogrammed to that. We now need to unprogram. And we need to start acknowledging for ourselves and finding the words that work for us. Okay. And until you start looking at it for yourself, well, you can use someone else's ideas as a concept, but find your tweaking of words, what works for you, how you can make fear your friend. Because when you start to think like that, you've already ceased the separation. You're bringing it in so that you can become whole and at one again. Because while you keep fear out there, your separation, and you'll keep playing the loops and all the patterns and the programs continue. But the minute you bring it in, because that fear, keep remembering, every fear you have is not outside of you. It's not out there. As I'll say to my old clients, go and get me your fear and bring it in the room and show me your fear now. You can't. It's here. So every fear you have starts here and in the solar plexus, operating as one through ego. The minute you break that network and you say, okay, I get the concept, I might not be able to do it yet, but I can see what she's saying. I have to somehow like you, fear. Now feel the difference when you start, because I remember when I started this, when I said, okay, I'm going to like fear, I could feel in my body, no, you don't, no, you don't, no, you don't. And I had to own that and go, oh, okay, hang on a minute, there's a bit of work to do here. Or when I tried to say something and I would say, I like you, fear, I knew damn well I wasn't meaning what I was saying. But I'm conscious to the separation in that moment. So as I'm conscious, I can do something about it now. And it's that moment of aiming to do something. You've just made a new creation for yourself. Okay? And it's step by step by step. Time's okay. You don't have to do it tomorrow. There is no time schedule here. You're on your own divine contract time. Allow that to be. Just be honest to yourself, not pretending anymore. Honesty is your path forward to growth. Just that simple acknowledgement to you. You watch the difference in your world and your being.
And that honesty is the true key factor there. You know, even if you can just be honest to a journal, you're still being like more honest than you are just keeping it in here.
Yeah.
And the more honest that we can get with it, the more that it can invite that polarity of understanding just or choosing to buy into, or what you're choosing to perpetuate. You know, we've all been in situations where, you know, we've had very pressing issues that, you know, big emotions have then been aligned to, that where we constantly continue to invite those big emotions back, even though we might preach to another in that same circumstance that, you know, panicking about it or feeling anxiety about it doesn't change it, does it? You know, we might preach that till the cows come home, but when we're really in that moment of feeling it, it takes quite a bit for us to step outside of that and really step into a different frequency. But I also know, and I can feel into every single one of you that listen to these little episodes of what we do, that you've done it before. So I know that you know the vibration of it. And that's all you really need to tune into is I know within myself the vibration of what it feels like when I'm aligning to either or.
Yeah.
So I just continue to follow that one as opposed to continue to follow that one. And we've talked about a plethora of skills to go alongside of that in previous episodes. It really, we continue to bump our gums about the same thing ultimately. Hey, can we get on? We'll talk about something new. You know, we've spoken about crystals. We've spoken of, no, it still comes back to the same thing. Get your tools together. Tools.
That's it. You know, if I could tell you the early days of me confronting my fear, it wasn't pretty. There was a lot of screaming and swearing, I can tell you, and a lot of yelling in my kitchen and yelling at mirrors. And, you know, you're talking to Miss Negative and Miss Fearful of the world, you know, absolutely. So I know exactly where you are, but I also know how to get through. You know, we've done it and we're still doing it. But for me, it is when you're ready, and don't you this, I think this is probably the next last key. Don't do anything until you're ready. Because if you think you have to do something, or you're going to be judged by someone, or you're not keeping up with the Joneses, or you're under the expectation that if I don't do it, then I haven't done what they wanted me to, or I'm not up with a group, or whatever you're telling yourself, be honest. Here's the honesty factor again. Just be honest to you and just say, I'm not ready. So what? It might be simply that as your test, to be honest, and then all of a sudden 10 minutes later you'll be ready.
Yep.
Because these are the tests we set up for ourselves. You know, that if you keep plodding through and pushing, this is the old masculine at work of I have to, I must, I should. That's all fear again, because if I don't, no, we don't want that. This is an old program again. We want you to step out from that and say, I'm not ready. You don't have to tell anybody else except yourself. I don't want to now. This doesn't feel right. Well, you're tuning. That's okay. Because the minute you've done that, you'll probably have a whole heap of learning of lessons of going, wow, because you'll see by listening what comes.
Yep.
That's as simple as it can be. But we get caught up in the, no, let's chop all that crap away and just really bring it back to basics. I love basics. Keep coming back to simplicity. You can't go wrong.
Well, my final call on that is I'll tell you a little something of a conversation that I had between my friend and I this morning. She goes, I just feel like I need to find my journal and journal. I'm like, yes, I woke up feeling the same way because I feel like I haven't journaled in about 3 mornings. And I said to her, I just need to read something from the Course in Miracles and that'll set me up to journal for a week. And she laughed and she goes, yes. And I said to her, I continued to go, I had the Course in Miracles on my bedside table and that didn't work. So I bought the Course in Miracles downstairs and it's still sitting there. And she goes to me, and isn't that lovely? Isn't that just the Course in Miracles teaching is to observe the resistance and just allow the resistance to be there.
Yeah. And
you've honored it. The Course in Miracles got me again.
Well, mine's been sitting in here for about over a week, and I think I must do that. I don't think it's resistance. I just it's not time. I don't need it because I love it.
Well, it is what it is.
It is what it is. You know, just be honest and feel and come back to your basic skill set and employ them as often as you can, because they're going to keep you as balanced as you can be to then catapult from.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's
it for
next time. Yep. We got to run today. Sorry. See ya. Thanks for joining.